Hey folks, it's a beautiful day. May 16th, 6 days until the expiry of our contract. So the Kaplan Report came out today, and I just did a 10-minute long video where I rambled on about a number of things. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that the Kaplan Report basically says everything we already know. Several times he talks about how we have to negotiate our agreements. Yes, we do. Some key takeaways on our side is that he says that in all the emails he received, most of them said that Canada Post is a service that Canadians want and desire. That this is something that we should have as a service. But he does say that the government needs to decide how much money they want to invest in that service, seeing as the decline of letter mail is a reality. Nobody's doubting that. We do know that mail is decreasing, but it is still something that's going to exist. Matter of fact, it may pick up as AI picks up and your passwords become useless. But and then he talks about the parcel business. He talks about the parcel business, and he goes on to explain that there are many carriers in the cities, hundreds of them, and perhaps that are quite ready and able to take very quick deliveries and change their methods of operation and hire cheap labor, but that nobody wants to do that outside the cities, right? Nobody wants to do that outside the major centers, and that's what we're cut doing. He never goes as far as to say that maybe Canada Post should have the exclusive privilege of delivering parcels of a certain variety, say non-rush parcels or something like that, because that would, ensure the service of the post office for all eternity. But that's apparently a communist view. But then he talks a lot about Canada Post's budget and how he outright disputes the idea that CUPW accuses the corporation of mismanaging their funds. He says that all the reports have been fiscally managed, and he's correct. They have all been reviewed and fiscally managed, but that doesn't mean that if you buy 10,000 trucks last year and only use 1,000 of them, that makes a good financial sense. It's kind of a created loss of money. In 2022, the CEO, Doug Ettinger, set out a plan to spend $4 billion over the next 3 years, and he's done just that. And all that money came from savings. And he just happened to time it with the end of our contract. It's a big shocker there, hey? And the value of the company has gone up by, I think, $3.5 billion over the last several years. Like the actual value, if you want to buy Canada Post, that's how much it would cost. I think it's $14 billion now. So I don't know what the hell he's doing, but half the reports he cited in his document, maybe not half, but some of the reports he cited are from Canada Post about the future. And some of those reports said things like we were going to be losing $1 billion as of 2022, which never came to fruition. They're all doom and gloom experiences. The one thing I do agree here is that if we are forced into a situation with part-time labor, that it shouldn't be gigified. Kaplan did agree with that. He said that part-time employees should have the ability to be part of the same standards of work as the other members of our group, including benefits and pension and pay and all of those things. So I can't really knock him on that one, although I think that the fact that Canada Post already has 20% of its labor as part-time plus like 1 million hours or more of temporary labor every year, I think there's plenty of flexibility there. There's some changes that need to happen about weekend delivery. I don't dispute that. But we've been trying to make those changes, but Canada Post is not interested in what those changes are if they're not going to get their 4-hour-a-week employees. Which is just not something that's sustainable. There's just no way that can happen. Canada Post is on glue. People want good jobs. They don't want 4-hour-a-week jobs. That's just a lie to tell you to justify Uber Eats and Amazon. Another thing that the Kaplan Commission recommends is CMBs, community mailboxes. Depending on where part of the country you're in and where you are, you may already have one of these. They're the box that's got 20 mailboxes in each one. Sometimes there'll be 3, 4, 20, 30 of them all together. I'm not entirely opposed to CMBs, but I am very opposed to the way Canada Post uses them. Rather than some, say, on a standard city block where there's probably 20 houses, putting one of them in the middle of the block for those 20 houses, Canada Post would rather put 10 or 20 of them in a park somewhere in a community, therefore not having to deliver to anywhere in the community. But then they don't give the proper values for parcel delivery. That has to go to your door, to the carriers. But that's Canada Post's problem. It would be much easier for me to swallow community mailbox delivery if it was handled in a method that was favorable to the consumer, right? We want to have good consumer relations. And if you had to walk 50 feet or 100 feet for your CMB, that's not a big deal. But when you got to drive to another part of your community, that's excluding people, right? Like, we don't want people to drive everywhere. It's an environmental disaster, but we want to put these things over there 30 blocks away. Well, maybe not 30 blocks away, but a good distance away in your community while it's 30 below here in Edmonton. And nobody wants to shovel it, and it's on public property, and why is it the city's responsibility to clear all this crap? You know, there's various problems with that that I just don't like. The other one is closing rural post offices. Kaplan did a poor job of explaining this. I think what he actually means is that post offices that are in areas that used to be rural but are now urban, small towns that have gone big or been annexed, that we should close the post. They shouldn't have protection to close the post office. But what I see what he's actually saying is, in any town where there's a profit motive that we can make it, we should give it to somebody else. We should give it to Shoppers Drug Mart so they can profit off of the idea. That's like, we're trying to be sustainable here. Why would we give the work away? The other one is by removing that protection. Who says they're not going to close the post office down in Dewberry or in Pickardville or Clyde or some of these small towns outside the city that nobody wants to deliver to? And that requires them to open the Canada Post Corporation Act, and that's always a dangerous business. Because, you know, politicians get their fingers in it and people get their mandate ideas and they get bright ideas with all the different things. But look, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers has objected to this from the start. We feel that if there's going to be a mandate review or a review of the post office, it needs to be done properly. It needs to involve all of the people, all the stakeholders, all the customers, and go across the country and ask for that. We've objected to this process. I feel like this is exactly what's happening. So in one of my other videos, I discussed about how binding arbitration wouldn't work for the company because binding arbitration has rules, and those rules are in order to just get everybody qualified, satisfied enough to go back to work, so they don't make sweeping changes to the collective agreements. But if they use binding arbitration in that regard, Canada Post loses. We don't win, but Canada Post definitely loses because they want massive changes. They basically want to gut our collective agreement. So this has been their method of creating a situation where they can offer us binding arbitration, but then they have recommendations of an expert on how to make the changes. So therefore they can bypass the rules that limit the ability of the arbitrator. We'll have to see what comes in the future, but Canada Post still isn't at the table. I think they're just riding it out, and I suspect that they'll probably cancel all of our benefits as soon as the 22nd comes around, and then that puts it in our court as to what we want to do about that. But we're still another step closer to resolution. Stranger things have happened. They might come up with an offer going forward based off of this, which they said they're going to do on their own website. They said that they're going to take all the recommendations in and make offers on it, so we'll see where they go. All right, have a great day.